Hello and welcome to my kitchen. In this video, I'm going to show you how to make all butter shortbread biscuits because this bonny lass just got back from Scotland. So let's get cooking. Now, to make a basic shortbread isn't that hard, but if you want to make a really good shortbread, there are a few tips and tricks that you need to know. And that's all in the method of making it and also the ingredients. So I'm going to share all those tips and tricks that I've learned from my experience making this shortbread. So first of all, let's take a look at the ingredients. The first thing we're going to need is flour. So you need a total of 6 ounces or 185 grams of flour, but I like to split it up into plain flour and fine semolina. So this is 5 ounces or 155 grams of plain flour and 1 ounce or 30 grams of fine semolina. And I just find this combination gives a much better texture. The next thing is butter. So you need 4 ounces or 125 grams of butter, and salted butter is very important. I think in any cookies that you make, you need a little bit of salt. And so just use salted butter and that will handle the salt in there. Also, you need a very good quality butter. So either use Anchor or Kerrygold. This is Kerrygold butter or any high quality butter that you have available. Finally, I have some sugar here and I'm using 2 ounces or 60 grams of caster sugar here. You want to make sure that you're using caster sugar and not granulated sugar. And just a little bit additional caster sugar for sprinkling on top of the cookies when they're done. So the ingredients are very basic. There's just 4 simple ingredients in there and you need a weighing scale to measure this out. Now the next thing is the method. So for this, I'm going to get a large bowl and I'm going to put my plain flour and my fine semolina into the bowl and mix it by hand so that it's completely mixed up. Then I'm going to add the butter and break up the butter with my fingertips and make crumbs in with the flour. Then once I've mixed all the butter in, I'm going to add the sugar. And just mix this together again to make fine breadcrumbs. Once it's mixed completely together, then I'm going to start gently kneading it together to make it into a smooth ball. But you definitely want to make sure that you do not over knead at this point. Just mix it together until it becomes a nice smooth ball. Now to bake the cookies, you can roll out the dough until it's 1/4 to 1/2 inch thick and then cut them into fingers or round biscuits depending on your preference. Or you can make petticoats, which are this shape. So it's little triangles and it's got the fork pricks in there and sugar sprinkled on it, and these are my favorite in shortbread shapes, so that's what I'm going to show you today. I actually baked these yesterday, posted a picture on Facebook, and I got so many comments as to how professional it looked, so I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. Now to do that, I'm using a 18¼ centimeter or 7½ inch or 7 1/4 thereabouts spring foam pan, and spring foam pans have this removable base, so that we definitely need a removable base because we're going to be baking it, taking it out and cutting it, and I'm going to show you the method I use to make it look like this. To get started with that, I've cut out a piece of parchment or baking paper so that it fits into my spring foam pan. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the dough and I'm actually going to roll it onto this piece of parchment paper until it covers the whole parchment paper. And this will make the dough about 1/2 inch or just under 1/2 inch thick. So these are fairly thick shortbread biscuits and we actually like them like that. So that's what I'm going to show you. So I've got my parchment paper and I'm just going to knead the dough one more time just to make sure it's all together nicely. Place it onto the parchment paper. Then we're going to start rolling it. And you might get some cracks like this, and that's okay. We can fix that later. So just go around the edges and push it all back in. And then just roll it again. So there you have it. And then we're going to put this into our spring foam pan. So make sure you have the parchment paper underneath. That just makes it easier to lift. And place it into the pan. And then push the edges down. Then you can either make the shape with your fingers by pushing it down and making indentations, or you can use a fork. So I'm going to use a fork, and I'm just going to press down on the edges to make a petticoat design. So this bit actually looks like the lace of the petticoat, which is under the gown. And that's why these are called petticoat biscuits. So once you've done that, this is how it's going to look. And then I'm gently going to press it and take out the whole base. Then what I like to do is to cut the biscuits out. So I'm going to cut this. And we'll be cutting it twice because when we bake this, it will actually come together again. So I'm going to cut it into quarters and then into eighths. The reason I do this now is because I like to make the fork pricks even. So I'm going to go around and I'm pricking the fork inside about halfway through the biscuit. So now that we've pricked the whole biscuit with a fork, we're actually going to put it back into our pan. There we go. And we're going to refrigerate this for about 30 minutes. And then we're going to turn on the oven and let the oven preheat at 160 degrees Celsius. Just go ahead and cover the biscuit with a plate. Now you might be wondering why I add fine semolina to the shortbread mix. And I've tried quite a few bits of shortbread and I've tried quite a few shortbread and I've noticed very slight differences in them. Now the most popular brand of shortbread biscuit, they use just plain flour, and those are actually very, very good. So if you don't want to add fine semolina, it's fine. You can just add the plain flour and they'll come out good. But I was speaking to my son yesterday after I made these shortbread biscuits, and he was trying to describe to me that, you know, when you have those famous brand of biscuits, which I'm not going to mention the name, but you know who they are, they're good. They've got the bite to it, but after a while it gets a bit gloopy in your mouth. And these biscuits that you've made, Mum, because my son's talking to me, telling me this, he said, that doesn't happen. So I was like, so did you like them? And he's like, yeah, they're actually better than the famous brand. And I'm like, oh wow, that's really good. So I was very happy with that review that my son gave me. So I think if you add just a little bit of fine semolina to the shortbread mix, the texture just comes out really, really good. And use salted butter. I can't stress that enough, because whenever you have something sweet, you just need a little bit of salt in there, and the sweet and the salty just takes it to another level. So make sure you try this recipe exactly as I've mentioned, and I think you're gonna love it. The other thing I learnt was some people use cornstarch in their shortbread biscuits. And when we went to Scotland, I actually compared the cornstarch recipe with just the famous brand recipe, which is just plain flour. And most of us did not like, and I say most of us is I'm talking about the group, my family group that I went with, they did not like the biscuit with the cornstarch in there. So I've tested out a couple of recipes, and this is what I've come out with. It's been tested and tried and approved. So definitely give this recipe a go. And if you enjoy my videos, then don't forget to subscribe and give me a thumbs up. My dough has been in the fridge for just over 20 minutes, so there's about 10 minutes left. So I'm going to start preheating my oven at 160 degrees Celsius. So this has been in the fridge for 30 minutes, and now I'm going to go ahead and put it into the preheated oven. We're going to let this bake for 40 minutes and then we're going to check it. So this has been cooking for 40 minutes in the oven, and you can see that it's a beautiful fawn color. So now I'm just going to remove it from this tin. So the easiest way to remove it is to put a cup and then just put the tin. Once you've removed it, you can see the lines have now come together. You can just about see the lines. So go ahead and cut the cookie while it's warm, because it's definitely easier to cut. Then here I have a baking tray with a silicone sheet on it, and I'm going to carefully put the biscuits on here, but I want to slide it off of the tray, just leaving it on the parchment paper. So I'm going to try and do that with a knife. And you have to be very careful, otherwise you'll break the biscuits. Now you saw that even I had a little bit of trouble getting the biscuits off of the tray base. It's just because it's so hot and I didn't want to burn myself. So be very, very careful when you're doing it. Number one, so that you don't burn yourself, and number two, so you don't break the biscuits. Because when the biscuits are warm, they are going to be a little bit fragile. And then gently separate them out very carefully, because they're very fragile. Now we're going to put this back into the oven to cook for a little bit longer, just so that it cooks through. They are a little bit soft in the middle and you want it to be like firm. So I'm going to leave it in there for another 5 to 10 minutes. So this was baked for an additional 10 minutes, and ovens do vary, but this is the color that you're looking for. You want a beautiful golden brown or fawn color. So now I'm just going to sprinkle some of the caster sugar on the top, and we're going to let it cool for about 5 to 10 minutes on the tray. You don't want to move it right away because they are still very fragile, as we saw earlier. After they've cooled on the tray for about 5 to 10 minutes, then carefully move them to a wire rack to cool completely. And once they're cooled completely, you're ready to enjoy them. Now, if you do feel like they need to bake a little bit longer, it's totally fine to pop them back in the oven, even with the caster sugar on. Just put them in there, but keep an eye on them. These cookies are so delicious. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. And if you did, don't forget to give me a thumbs up. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below. And I'll see you all soon for some more cooking inspiration. They're so good. perfect. Doing the taste test for each of these recipes is not helping my weight loss. I'm gaining weight, so I need to find somebody else to taste the food. Let me see. You'll find out in the next video.